Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to my show. First of all, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. There's a near infinite amount of very interesting channels on YouTube, and I'm truly honored that you chose to take some time to click on this one. Despite sometimes having to have slightly clickbaity titles, I think that most people will agree that the content of my videos is generally somber and serious, although sometimes I throw in a funny slide to liven things up. I try to look at this topic as well as any other topic that I cover on my channel with sincerity and trying to be as even handed as possible, even if many of you think that I'm taking sides. And I've had a few people criticize me for not taking a side, for, quote, sitting on the fence. Now, if any of you want to know, I try to be clear in my videos, but in many of the ones that I've done concerning the Aftermath Foundation situation, people don't always quite get what I'm trying to say. So here's what I believe. First, we don't know everything that was going on. And when you don't know all the facts, it's risky making too many conclusions. And that holds true for anything in life. Second, it doesn't really matter what any of us on the internet think. A nonprofit is governed by a board, and as long as they operate within their bylaws, as well as state and federal laws, they're pretty much free to do what they please or what they feel like they must do. They've made their decision, and no matter how much we beat this dead horse, that's not going to change. Third, it was clear that it was time for Aaron Smith Levin to leave the Aftermath Foundation board for a number of reasons. And in his second and final video, which he did, while it was sometimes hard and emotional to watch, he eventually got to the point, I believe at the end, where he realized that it was time for him not to be on that board, that he is now liberated to act as he wants and to create a new foundation with an expanded mission. I think that that's positive for both boards. The Aftermath Foundation will no longer have to deal with the issues that it had with Aaron, and I hope that Aaron will be successful in creating a new board that encompasses his vision. I think that we should all wish him well, and when he does create that foundation, if you're so moved, you should consider supporting him financially. Fourth, this incident exposed a number of structural issues within the Aftermath Foundation. The optics of having now 3 married couples on the board is problematic to most of the public. In my videos, which I've discussed pros and cons of that, very few people have written to me expressing that they're comfortable having married couples on the board. It would seem from my research, and which I've discussed in a previous video, the IRS may have basically an unwritten rule that you can't have a majority of board members being married couples or being related. This comes from rulings in case law, but is not clearly written out by the IRS or other government agencies. Even if it is legal, it's probably better that they change their bylaws to prohibit people in domestic partnerships from being on the board at the same time. That doesn't mean that one partner can't still be a volunteer with the organization, but being domestic partners, being voting members of the board of directors at the same time, seems to be a public relations nightmare. I also think that there should be term limits, and this extends to people who were founders. It doesn't mean that after staying off for a term that they can't be voted back on. But it's good to get new blood in an organization and also allow long-time board members to sit off for a period of time to recharge their batteries. If they want to return to the board in the future, then that's okay. And in the meantime, they can still volunteer all they want. And it is also demonstrated, it's probably the case where it was not clear that all board members truly understood what was in the bylaws and what they were bound by. I think all organizations need to continually look at their articles of incorporation and bylaws and other policy documents, which are either required by the government or just are voluntary, to make sure that they are in compliance with regulations and have policies that everyone understands and is following. Fifth, I'll end up here as far as the lessons, but from what I've seen, Aaron looks like he's happy and has moved on. My gut feeling is that the other members of the board are now moving on also. Some people have pointed out that they don't think that that's the case because Mike hasn't posted anything. I won't speak for him because I don't know him, but I think he has a lot of stuff going on in his life, and he doesn't post 5 times a day like Aaron does. Mark, I think, has pointed out that he's just busy with work and will get back to posting soon. I think that the so-called Civil War in the Aftermath Foundation is over, and the only battle seemed to be between all the people that watch one or more of the channels under the SPTV umbrella. Many people have told me that they've unsubscribed from Blown for Good and Mike Render's channels. Some people say that they will continue watching the channels, but they wanted to unsubscribe to send a message. I understand the sentiments, but I've also cautioned people, if you liked those individuals and their content a month ago, really nothing has changed with their channels. It's been a change on the board that they are a member of, but they really are still the same good people that they were in your eyes a month ago. Unsubscribing to them isn't going to hurt them much. And if you continue to watch their videos, they're still going to get a little bit of money from the AdSense payments. If you really do unsubscribe because you dislike how you see they behaved on the board of the Aftermath Foundation, then nothing that I say is going to change your mind. And I have no gain at all in encouraging you to continue watching their content, other than I think that that what they have to say is accurate and valid and will continue to educate people about the evils of this particular cult. Quite honestly, I could make sensationalist videos harping on Claire and Mark and Mike, and I would get more subscribers, and that would translate to more views, and that would be more money for me. But I'm not going to take that route because I think that it's intellectually dishonest. Anyway, let me leave you with one last thought for this section. If you think that unsubscribing and perhaps not watching Mark and Claire and Mike's videos hurts them, even to a little degree, perhaps you're right. But who does it help? Does it help Aaron? No, not at all. You're still going to watch Aaron's videos, and I encourage you to. Quite honestly, even though I have some disagreements about how he behaved, he's usually the first channel I check out anytime I sit down at my computer and look at YouTube. But I would argue that the one person who benefits when you unsubscribe from Mike or Mark or Claire is David Miscavige. Scientology benefits when you unsubscribe from SPTV channels. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Okay, I'm not done. Actually, this video was originally intended to be a question and answer and comment video. I haven't done that with Scientology related content, but in the past, I've done a lot of content about D.B. Cooper, the infamous hijacker from 1971 who was never found. People would send in questions or comments and I would answer or respond to them. And I thought that I would do that tonight because I have hundreds of comments from people commenting on my Aftermath Foundation videos in the last couple days. However, when doing research and about to start answering some comments, I saw a comment from somebody who referenced a video recently done by Andrew Gold talking about the so-called Civil War and the Aftermath Foundation. Now, I'll tell you, I found Andrew Gold when he and Aaron Smith Levin did an interview together, and I used to watch more of Andrew's content. However, over time, he's had a lot of guests pushing unsubstantiated conspiracy agendas and the like. And I don't think that people like that should necessarily be deplatformed or anything like that. But he doesn't always have the background and knowledge to push back on these people. So what they say ends up looking like it being accurate information from a fairly well-respected source like Andrew Gold's channel. And I'm just not interested in wacky conspiracy theories. And quite frankly, many of his guests are not conspiracy theorists, but just have had such sad stories about their upbringing and certain families are in cults. And I just don't find that that adds any value to my life to hear such negative stories, even if they're true. Obviously, especially if they're true. Plus, from time to time, I leave what I consider to be very reasoned, detailed critiques on certain episodes that he's uploaded, and he was kind of a dick towards me on one of them, which I don't really think is indicative of the level of professionalism that I think he wants to demonstrate. Anyway, I did start to watch the video in question that one of my viewers commented about, and I didn't get through the whole episode. It got to the point where it was becoming repetitious and no longer added much intellectual value to me. But I think I got enough of the flavor of it. I watched at least 40 minutes of it, and some of it more than once. So I felt moved to respond to some of the assertions made by the guest, who coincidentally doesn't live too far away from me in Oregon. So here's what I wrote as a comment on Andrew Gold's channel, and a little of it covers some of the stuff that I've talked about earlier in this video, although the content I came up with after that comment I came up with after posting on Andrew's channel. By the way, before I read this, I encourage you to check out the video in question. I wouldn't fault you for not watching the whole thing, although I think that there is value in watching some of it and getting exposed to the guests' ideas and opinions, many of which I agree with and obviously many that I don't. And remember, Andrew is in England, and I assume that while many of his viewers and commenters are from the United States, many are going to be from other English-speaking countries. And so I phrased a few of the things that I wrote in a way to make it very clear to Canadians or Australians or people in the United Kingdom about what I meant in conjunction with nonprofit boards in the United States, which, if I was writing to an American audience, I might not need to do. So I wrote, like many, I was horrified and saddened to hear of your guest's upbringing, and it's truly a credit to him and an amazing feat that he's ended up with the success that he has experienced from such traumatic beginnings. The rest of what he said, much of it I agree with, yet there is a lot that I take issue with in his interpretations. One is his concept of benefiting the most people with the least harm to other people. On the surface, that can sound like a very good strategy or philosophy, and for the most part, I agree with it. The problem is, who makes the decision on who is harmed when other people are saved or helped? The philosophical impacts of this stretch from having to ration medical care to deciding on what to do in the case like that which is currently seen in the Middle East or even in Ukraine. And there's all kinds of rabbit holes that one can go down from there, and I won't. But when you're talking about the question at hand, the Aftermath Foundation, and who has done the most for it, who has raised the most money, but who has done potentially more to embarrass it or become compromised, where it might lead to the detriment of the foundation, that's where things are tricky. And really are opinions, and sometimes it doesn't matter ultimately. Sure, the Aftermath Foundation has benefited from Aaron's popularity with his YouTube channel. A few days ago, in preparation for one of my videos on the subject, I was looking through their various public filings with the state of Texas and the state of Florida. They went from having very little money to having a lot of money now, and I think most of it is a byproduct of Aaron's channel. And doing my research of the legal and financial filings, I've not yet found the original articles of incorporation for the foundation, which would have the original members' names. But from what I've seen, it's clear that at least early on, Mike Rinder and his wife, along with the Headleys, were on the board with Luis Garcia and Aaron Smith-Levin, and likely Ray Jeffrey, who is a lawyer. Amy Scobie and her husband came on the board after Luis left. Aaron likes to claim that it was he and Luis who started the Aftermath Foundation. Did he and Luis first come up with the idea? Maybe. But when they incorporated, did they have two other couples and a lawyer incorporate it with them? That seems to be the case. At 4 minutes and 23 seconds, your guest said, Aaron is the Aftermath Foundation. This seems like a valid statement. Gut feeling tells you yes, but it's blatantly incorrect. Foundations are legal entities in the United States made up of members who have a legal fiduciary responsibility not to harm the organization. Your guest is looking at this through his lens of corporate PR, and that's a valid lens to look at when you're contemplating how the public will react to a situation, and usually one which they have very little information about. However, this is not how the officers of a nonprofit in the United States can look at a situation within their organization. In the video that Claire did by herself, she read from the bylaws of the organization. I couldn't find an independent copy online of those bylaws, but I'm going to assume that if she says that those were the bylaws that they passed when the organization was created, that it is an accurate statement. Part of their bylaws, and this is somewhat unusual for nonprofits, certainly not the ones that I've been in leadership positions with, but there were basically some morals clauses. And in Aaron's video, he referenced this but indicated that this was just something Luis had copied and pasted from another source and that nobody voted on it. This may be Aaron's interpretation, but if it was in the bylaws, which Claire claims it was, when the organization was incorporated, those bylaws were voted on by members, which included Aaron. I know that some people are confusing that vote, which probably took place 6 years ago, with the discussion and vote about the conflict of interest statement that the state of Florida required the board to adopt recently. I know that many people believe that on the spur of the moment, three married couples who are all friends just decided to get rid of Aaron, whether it's because of the police are getting called to bars that Aaron's at, or Aaron himself alluded he engaged in reckless behavior, which has given me the impression that he may have been the target of an OSA honey trap scheme or something along those lines. The problem when you are a nonprofit board and you have a member who's starting to demonstrate a history of public or semi-public incidents, even if it's on the face of it based on reckless personal behavior, if it violates the bylaws of the organization and if it starts becoming a distraction for the officers to operate the organization, then they need to do something about it. And it's clear from the timeline that's been released, Aaron was talked to on a number of occasions, and he admitted that he did not always follow through in doing what he promised, including documenting certain things. Could the situation have been dealt with better? Yes, probably. Was it time for Aaron to leave the board? Yes. Did he admit that he did not want to leave the board for various reasons? Yes. But I think that by the end of his second video, which he did live, he realized it was time for him to be off the Aftermath Foundation and move on with his life, and he intends to create a new foundation that does similar things but goes beyond the mission of the Aftermath Foundation, and I think that that's a great idea. Was the behavior of some of the remaining board members indicative of their upbringing in Scientology? I would argue no. Many people have said that, but I think that if you really look at it, that's just coming up with an easy answer to explain why a board did what they did to make a hard decision. The Aftermath Foundation is a charity. There is no money or compensation for the board members other than compensating them for out-of-pocket expenses. If this was a private business where Aaron was the primary salesman and brought in a lot of money, and then the other board members got rid of him so that they could keep his commission, then yeah, that would be an example of bad behavior. But as I pointed out, the board did what eventually they were forced to do by Aaron's continued behavior and not following through on what he promised behind the scenes. By getting rid of Aaron from the board, nobody remaining benefits. They're very intelligent people, and they knew that if they followed through with removing Aaron after he promised to resign and then didn't, that donations to the Aftermath Foundation would likely decrease. They knew that many of their subscribers would unsubscribe, thereby losing subscribers and views, which would cost them decreased AdSense payments from YouTube. There is no financial gain or power gain for any of those members to remove Aaron Smith Levin. They did so because they felt at this point that is what they had to do for the good of the organization. Nonprofits in the United States are not an individual personality like Aaron, who must accommodate the, quote, star of the show. They are, rather, a legally incorporated organization which has a mission and which must carry out the mission and do so within the confines of their own bylaws, as well as various state and federal laws. Your guest and many people across the internet now have a problem with three married couples on the board. He says that it doesn't feel safe, but I've been watching these channels for over a year. In not one case have I ever heard anyone comment anywhere, "Wait a minute, there's too many married couples on the board." Nobody had a single complaint about married couples being on the board. Aaron never brought that up, and if you believe that Aaron was the one who created the foundation, then he's the one who invited Mike and his wife and the Headleys onto the board. Obviously, Aaron never had any problem with the original two couples, and I don't think that it would be a bad idea for the board to have a prohibition against domestic partners being on the board. But would the outcome have been any different? Let's say that you get rid of the men from the married couples, so then you have a board with Claire, Christy, Amy, Ray, and Aaron. At the final board meeting where Aaron was removed, Ray did not show up. The vote is 3-1, as opposed to 6-1, which really happened. Either way you do the math, Aaron is off the board. I understand that people who have never been on a board assume that nobody on a board of any type conspires unless they were former Scientologists. People on boards can talk to each other, and factions often develop. In fact, what I see with this board is that, with the exception of Aaron and Luis, who would not carry out his duties as president and so therefore resigned, and who knows what Ray's up to, but the rest of the board was united. Lastly, your guest points out that many times that they are an artist. As someone, me, who for many years chaired a county-wide arts advocacy nonprofit, as well as a longtime member of the county's Art and Culture Funding Board, I find that there are two types of self-designated individuals who are here to save society: cult leaders and artists. When artists say, quote, "My job as an artist is to," well, then usually it's not. No one voted to give this or that artist the job of bringing people together or teaching people this or that. Those are self-assigned beliefs that artists formulate in their heads and then use the cloak of being an artist to convince the public that what they say or do is valid. Somebody can be a great painter. Their skill could match Rembrandt, but that does not magically translate into meaning that anything that they have to say about a subject has any more or less merit than anyone else. But the merit in an argument on any topic needs to be based on an understanding of what happened and what the parameters are of how those decisions are made. And just because one knows what happened in Los Angeles 6 months ago with Aaron Smith Levin, as the guest said, it does not mean that they fully understand the mechanics of how to successfully and legally operate a 501c3, that is, a nonprofit organization, and how to deal with issues that come up within the framework of their bylaws, as well as the complexity of federal and state regulations. Okay, so that's the end of the message that I left on Andrew Gould's channel. As I edited this, I found a couple small typos, so I went back to the original post. Actually, the first time that I tried to post it, it wouldn't go through. Perhaps it was too big, so I cut it up into chunks. But I see that someone on his YouTube channel, presumably Andrew, has deleted half of what I wrote. We'll have to see if he deletes the rest. It's so sad that he tries to censor a sincere critique of part of his video. Okay, I'm going to stop here. If you are still watching my video, I really appreciate it. I know a lot of you disagree with me, and that's okay. It's a free country, and we don't need to all agree with each other, but hopefully we can disagree in a respectful manner, and most of the people who disagree with me have been very respectful in their comments. Whether you agree or disagree with me, I love to hear from you, whether it's a couple words or a couple paragraphs. If you haven't already, I really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. I've already got my channel monetized, and after about 3 years and probably 375 videos, I've made $28. And if you appreciate the time that it takes me to make these videos, comment. Even if you disagree with me, why don't you hit that like button and check out my other videos. I have a lot more than just Scientology, a wide range of topics, something for everyone. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.